If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome, folks. This is the More Money Show on Red Apple Radio Network. Thank you so much for joining. Hoping you're having a wonderful weekend and hoping that you will stick with us throughout the show because we have amazing guests coming on. This has been a tumultuous week, to say the least, in terms of what is happening with our economy, what's happening in politics. We're going to cover it all this afternoon. And for those who are listening at different times of the day, we want you to stick with us because it's an incredible the amount that I have to cover on what happened with the elections, what's happening with the economy, why are people so angry with Donald Trump, because clearly that election was a protest vote against Donald Trump, and you saw hordes and hordes of Democrats, record amounts of numbers of people turning out at the polls because they are angry with Trump. And it's so interesting about Donald Trump, by the way. I'm a big, for those of you who are regulars of the show, I'm a big fan of Donald Trump's. I've worked as a senior economic advisor to Trump over the years. But in some ways, Trump is his own worst enemy. And he does amazing things for our economy. I'm really bullish on the U.S. economy. Let me say that loud and clear. I think this U.S. economy is going to be a blockbuster in 2026. Turn January, I think we're going to start to see those tax cuts kick in, the impact of the lower energy prices and gas prices. We have a record low amount of illegal immigration in this country. The stock market is just soaring under Trump. We have all-time highs with the NASDAQ, with the S&P 500, with the Dow Jones. Amazing, amazing stuff. So, look, I like a lot what Trump is doing for our country, but clearly a lot of voters are angry. And maybe it's just the way that Trump goes about it, achieving these ends. But when you look at the actual performance, put aside for a second Donald Trump's personality and behavior, because I know people have very different opinions of Trump. But if you just look at the results, then you'd have to say things are going quite well. Now, I know the big issue right now. I saw the exit polls. I saw what voters said after they left the voting booth. They said, we're angry about the prices of things and, quote, affordability, unquote. That's a new word, affordability. But I have to tell you, we have the statistics. We've done them at the my group, Unleash Prosperity. The average family after inflation, since Trump came into office, has seen an $1,100 increase. In other words, that means that things are $1,100 more affordable. Now, some of you may not believe these numbers. Oh my God, have you seen what coffee costs? Have you seen what eggs cost? Have you seen what ground beef costs? Yes, I have. I do a lot of the grocery shopping in our household. So I feel your pain. I know what you're talking about. But I'm here to tell you that if you are working, and if you're in a working family, as almost all of you are, then the incomes have on average gone up, not down. So I do think there's a bit of a mythology about this idea that things are less affordable. Yes, things are expensive. And yes, Trump has only brought the inflation down to 3% from, an average of almost 5.5% to 6% under Biden. But I want to remind people, the reason things are so expensive today, the reason you're paying so much for ground beef and for eggs and for coffee and for, rental payments and all of these things is because of Biden. Biden was the one with Jerome Powell who drove these prices up. Now, we've brought them down, but not enough. Not enough. We have to continue to drive down costs. But I got to tell you, you look at gas prices, they're pretty reasonable now. You look at even a lot of the other kind of things that people buy, toys, those are falling in price. You look at the bargains you can find if you go on Amazon, so on. So I think there's just a lot of anger about Trump himself, not his performance, because the economy is sound. Incidentally, if you look at China, their economy is in recession. If you look at Japan, not kind of a flat economy. You look at Europe, not much going on in Europe. Europe has been in a 25-year recession. They keep getting poorer and poorer. Canada, Mexico, the same thing. The one country that is growing and the one country with a blockbuster stock market is the United States of America. So we have to be doing something right. In fact, what the United States is doing is carrying the rest of the world on our shoulders because we have the most dynamic economy of all. I want to say this loud and clear. We'll talk about it throughout the show. I do not understand, because I know a lot of you on the show live in the New York area, and I know that you're concerned about what's happening to your city, what I call the Empire City, the most important city in the world, New York. It's a dangerous situation now. I do not understand how in one of the wealthiest cities in the world and the financial capital of the world, how you can have 50% of the voters vote for a socialist. It makes no sense to me. And I'm going to say this to you loud and clear, folks. This is a result of a rotten education system, of a left-wing takeover our schools, and telling young people that socialism and communism work, because they don't. They haven't worked anywhere in the history of civilization. And if they do, I'd love to hear from you. You tell me where it's worked, because I have found everywhere I've looked. You compare, look what happened in China. Look what happened in North Korea. Look what happened in Cuba. Look what happened in Venezuela. I mean, on and on and on with these countries that have tried socialism, communism. And by the way, if you don't believe it around the world, just look at the United States of America. Look at the cities and states that are struggling now. Let's see. You've got Los Angeles. You've got San Francisco. You've got Chicago. You've got Minneapolis. You've got New York City. All are declining. Why? Because they have had experiments in some form of socialism or another. And anyone who believes you can fix the problems of New York City, which are manifest, anyone who believes that you can solve those problems by raising taxes on the top 1%, you're crazy. You're crazy if you believe that. The top 1% already pay almost half of the income taxes in New York City. You raise their taxes and the people will leave. I know you've heard this 100 times. I'm not making it up. In the last 10 years, New York State has lost 2 million people. No state has lost more people than New York. It used to be people coming to New York. Now they're leaving New York, just like they're leaving California, just like they're leaving Illinois, just like they're leaving Massachusetts, just like they're leaving New Jersey. Gee, what do all those states have in common? Oh, yes, those are the highest tax states that try to soak the rich, and then the rich leave. And what are the states that are attracting people? Oh, let's see. You've got, Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Utah, Montana, the Carolinas. What do all those states have in common? Oh, yeah, they have less taxes. They have less regulation. They have less government. Anyone who believes in this nanny state idea that the government can give you everything you want for free, there's an old saying by Ronald Reagan, and I'll end with this little soliloquy with this. As Reagan used to say, a government that's big enough to give you everything you want is big enough to take away everything you've got. So be careful, folks, and we'll see whether we can get through this, because we've got a new mayor coming in who has a lot of lunatic ideas that are very dangerous. And I hope that he has some religion before he comes into office and starts to see the error of his ways, or New Yorkers will pay a very high price. This is the More Money Show, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show, and we are on Red Apple Audio Network. Thank you so much for joining in this busy weekend. So a lot happened this week. One of the most important issues of the week is what is going to happen with healthcare costs. I just got my healthcare statement. Our healthcare premiums are going to go up by 16%. A lot of people are getting notices that their healthcare costs are going to go up by 20, 25%, even 30%. I've heard people say their healthcare costs will go up 30% this year. Families cannot afford this. So when I heard these numbers, I thought, who can explain what the heck is going on with their healthcare system where these costs are exploding? And of course, I thought of Cynthia Fisher, who is one of the smartest people I know about our healthcare system. Her whole career has been in healthcare. She is the chairman of a group called Patient rights advocates. And she is going around the country and talking about why we need a better way to have transparency for patients in terms of what these things cost: hospital costs, drug costs, physician costs, all of these things. Nobody knows. It's the stupidest way to run a healthcare system. So, Cynthia, thanks so much for joining this afternoon.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here. And as founder and chair of PatientRightsAdvocate.org, this is a critical time for the American people because they're feeling the sting of our healthcare system run amok because the insurance premiums, as you mentioned, and the coverage costs for the average American and American businesses, to your point, are going up for the small and medium-sized businesses, 20%, 30%. Well, that's 10 times higher than inflation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's ludicrous. And there's no way the big insurance companies that administer these plans can justify this overreach. And the hospitals and the insurance companies, as long as they hide prices, Steve, they can charge whatever they want. And that's why we need prices.
This is exactly the point I wanted you to make, because I've learned so much about the healthcare system from you, Cynthia. And you have pointed out that if nobody asks what things cost in the healthcare system because somebody else is always paying for it, and there's no healthcare price transparency, you have a surgery, you have a hospitalization, you got to go to a patient visit for a doctor. Nobody knows what things cost, and you're the one who showed me that you can have a hospital that charges, I don't know, $6,000 for an MRI, and then you go down the street, and another one's charging $10,000. It's no way to run a healthcare system. Explain why we don't have healthcare transparency, and explain about how these costs. So how can you have one hospital charging 10 times more than another one for the same procedure?
Because the prices are hidden. It's that simple. And there are so many middle players that both the hospitals and the insurance companies have created or hired to figure out how to maximize their margins in the shadows. And we know sunlight is the best disinfectant. And you, as an economist, Steve, you know that any functional market needs to have prices be truly transparent. And the only thing in our economy where we don't have prices and we don't have transparency, and we see this runaway highway robbery happening every single day at every patient encounter and to every single employer plan, is healthcare. And, it functions, markets function. Free markets work when there's competition, and price and quality is what people want to know. They want to know, what are they going to get and what is it going to cost them? And we're at this moment in time where we see this huge issue that is a 96%. It polls at 96% of Americans. The 4% probably were polled at being hospital administrators or insurance company executives. But 96% of the American people, bipartisan, want to have prices because they believe firmly when they do see prices, they could see whether or not they were true to the bills, like they do in any other part of any other market. And then employers, they want access to the payment that they share with the workers in the workers' paychecks and take-home pay. Because, look, who really pays for all of healthcare is all of us. The American worker, we pay for our healthcare as both contributing a deduction from our paycheck before we get it as take-home pay. We share the expense of the coverage with our employers, and it's the American companies and employers that are sharing it with their workers. And we all pay as taxpayers for Medicaid and Medicare. So the only thing that's going to drive down these costs, and the only thing that's going to make healthcare affordable, is really simple, is to have full disclosure of the actual prices. Right. And hospitals and insurance companies negotiate them on a yearly basis. So they know in advance what they've agreed upon contractually. They're just hiding it from the true people that pay.
So, Cynthia, here's the question that I have, and I think a lot of our listeners do. How is it possible that, this is the only thing that we buy that I can think of where nobody knows what anything costs. Is it the insurance companies? Is it the hospitals? Why is it that nobody will tell us what these things cost? Because you just made a key point that I as an economist agree 100%. When we're all paying all of this money for this insurance and we load up on healthcare costs, that's coming out of the paychecks of workers, because so many workers have employer plans and they go up and up in cost. And when the cost of the plans rise, that means you don't get as much pay, right?
That's exactly right. And you as an economist know that just look at the American wages. They've been suppressed. And frankly, workers are lucky if they get an inflation adjustment, right, into their annual paycheck. And right now, what is it? 2.5%, 3%? Right now, inflation. Yes. But how can you justify that the piece that comes out of that worker's hide in a 30% contribution to the coverage costs with your employer, picking up 70%, how can an insurance carrier that's administering that, how can they justify 3 times more at the low end to 10 times more than inflation to grab hold of that paycheck? And Steve, if I can also tell you, it's even worse than wage suppression, because remember that the insurance industry has also said, well, to the employers, we'll help you solve these runaway costs by having higher deductibles. Well, who pays the higher deductible? It's the employee and their family. So, most people don't have $400 in savings in their bank account, and yet the average high deductible plan is around $2,000 per person. So, what has happened is most of the American families have fear of financial ruin because nearly everyone has a story of being surprised by a bill and overcharged. So they don't get the care they need because they have to pay that $2,000 deductible that they don't have.
Hey, Cynthia, we got to run, but this is great information. I'd love you to come back on in a couple of weeks and tell us how this is going, because there is so much anger in this country about these exploding costs of healthcare. It's pretty clear by now that the Affordable Care Act did not make healthcare more affordable. That is Cynthia Fisher. We will be right back, folks. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is The More Money Show, and we are now really honored to have one of the smartest people I know. That is Jeff Yass, who is the president of Susquehanna International Group. And he has been in the news a lot lately because he just recently donated $100 million to the University of Austin, which is an alternative college. I find this to be an amazing project. If this works, it really could be the solution to our escalating costs of colleges and universities, and also provide people with a real education. And it's about time we take on the empire of the universities. So, Jeff, thanks so much for joining.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Steve.
So let's get right down to it. First of all, tell people, most people I think are just starting to hear about Austin University. How did you get involved in this? And tell us how it's different. How is University of Austin different from all of the other colleges out there?
It's the University of Austin at Texas. So it's in Austin, right next to the University of Texas. So there's 92 freshmen, there's 72 sophomores. And the idea of the school was started by Panos Kanelos. And his idea was he had to start a new school basically based on classical learning, a lot of, Greeks, ancient philosophers and stuff, but also with classical liberalism, a big dose of classical liberalism. So I thought it was a great idea. They got great kids. They have Joe Lonsdale, who was great venture capitalist. They got Barry Weiss, who was great, and they have Neil Ferguson, who was a great free market economic historian. So they had a great lineup of people. I met the kids, and they were just incredible. These are kids who could have gone to very prestigious schools. Instead, they chose to go here. because it's small and entrepreneurial, and their kids just blew me away with their energy. And my idea was, let's give you enough money so that no one has to pay, with a promise, but not a legal commitment, that if you do well in life, you'll pay back. Oh. And the idea is the school is like a business. It's committed. If it doesn't do a good job and the kids aren't successful and they can't pay back, then the school fails, just like in the real world, as opposed to.
I love that idea.
Yeah. So
what I love about that idea, Jeff, is that right now I've always felt like with respect to all the unpaid student loans, rather than the taxpayers be on the hook of that, the universities who gave these people a crappy degree that's not worth anything, they're the ones who should pay for it if the kids haven't paid back their student loans. So you're saying now you're basically giving this school an incentive to make sure that these kids are getting a degree that's worth something, that they're actually learning something, and that they're going to be able to get a good job when they get that diploma, because they've actually got something that is worthwhile and they've actually got a first-class education.
Yeah, exactly. That's the idea. And as Milton Friedman said about, profit and loss, it's like hell in Catholicism. If, the loss part's just as important as the profit part, that if we don't do a good job and the kids don't pay back, the school will fail, which it should. And we're incentivized to make sure we do everything we can for them. If we do well, the school goes on. And if we don't, the school collapses.
And so the University of Austin is in Austin, Texas. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
And you said it's just beginning. So you have have there been any graduation? When did it start?
It started that we only have a sophomore class, but a great story is, and this really was incentivized me to give, last year, the freshman class, 5 kids went to work for Peter Thiel. He liked them all. He offered them all. He liked them all full-time jobs. It was just an internship.
Wow.
Two of the kids took it. So 2 of the kids went to college for a year and then said, well, I don't need it. I got a good job. So that's the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that we love to see. Most colleges would say, oh, if you drop out, you're a shame to a society. We're saying, come here. If you got something better to do, go do something better.
So I have a stepson who is in high school. He's a senior. He's actually a really, really smart kid, but he didn't get good grades in high school. Sort of like me. I was not an A student by any means when I was I was more interested in girls than I was in my classes. But this is a smart kid. He's got a high IQ. Now, how does somebody get into the school? How does he do it?
Well, the admissions criteria are great. It's basically just a high SAT score or ACT score. We barely look at your grades. There's no, recommendations from teachers, which is all BS.
Right.
There's no community service. You don't have to be on 20 different clubs and stuff like that.
Right.
We just want you to prove that you're smart with a high test score, and the application is basically a postcard, and then you're in.
And so now what about the tuition?
The tuition is $0.
What?
That's it. The tuition is free. That's the whole idea.
Wow.
That's what the $100 million is for. The tuition is free, so no one pays anything. The room and board it costs about $24,000 per kid. I mean, they have to pay for, there are apartments right near the school, and the kids like to cook, so they sort of cook for themselves. There's no cafeteria or anything like that, so they cook for themselves. So all tuition is fully paid for, and you're responsible for your own room and board.
Now, I'm sure there's not a football team yet.
No, and there's 92 kids. They're not winning. They're not beating the University of Texas, but they're right next to the University of Texas. So when they want to go to the games, they have all the excitement of a college.
And so, is it men and women?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. And so, what kind of, can you take classes in science and math and all the?
Yeah.
Can you?
So it's a lot of STEM classes, a lot of classical stuff, and then STEM classes, a lot of entrepreneurial classes, lot of coding classes, and we're even sending a Susquehanna quant down there next semester to teach a poker class.
Right.
So you can be a poker major if you want.
It's amazing. And so, by the way, I'm talking to Jeff Yass from Susquehanna Capital. University costs have risen at 3 or 4 times the rate of inflation over the last 30 years, and yet the level of education is falling.
Yeah. So that's why what we're really shooting for is a separation of education and state. The government should have as little role in education as possible. We, by the way, one of the things that's in our charter is we will not take a nickel from the government. Okay? So no government funding. So we don't have to battle with different administrations about different policies. We're free to do whatever we want. And we ask all other universities, could you do the same thing? So all these conflicts that we have now, in these contentious times, they're not necessary. Harvard, you have $58 billion. See if you can squeak by on $58 billion. You don't need to take the billion a year or so that you get from the government. Tell them to get out of here, and then you can do whatever you want. Any programs you want to do, that's up to you. You're a private institution, but you became quasi-government, and now all the conflict, all the unnecessary fighting comes as a result of that.
Incredible. So, Jeff, we have to take a quick break. Can you stick around for one more segment?
Sure.
Okay,
we'll be
right back, folks. Having a fascinating conversation with the great Jeff Yass. This is The More Money Show, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is The More Money Show. Thanks so much for joining. I'm continuing my conversation with Jeff Yass, who is with Susquehanna Capital and is one of the leading advocates in the country for school choice, giving every parent and every child in America the right to go to the best school that they can, whether it's public, whether it's private, whether it's a charter school, whether a Catholic school, a Jewish school, a Montessori school. I believe that's a human right, and I think you do too, Jeff. So first of all, thank you, Jeff Yass, for doing so much for providing these kinds of scholarships and so on. But we need to have the government allow people to escape from these failing schools. And some of that money should follow the children and the parents, not the education bureaucracy.
Yeah, I agree. Just to show you how bizarre the situation has gotten. The situation was bad 30 years ago. Since the last 30 years, the amount of money we spend on education, inflation adjusted, has doubled. So it was bad 30 years ago. It is absurd now. In New York City, they spend $40 billion on 900,000 kids. That's $44,000 per kid. Could you imagine the waste and the fraud that's in there? So if you had a policy that said, give the kid a $22,000 voucher, they can go to a great charter school, they can go to, even Catholic schools don't cost anywhere near that amount. Put the $22,000 in the kid's bank account, he'll graduate with $300,000 and have a better education. Wow. You ask, how can we...
Wait, hold on, Jeff, because I want to make... Hold on. This is amazing. So you're saying they could spend half of what they do spend, and they could give the other half to the kids, so that when they graduate, they have money in the bank, and they'd get a better education.
Right. Much better education, school of their choice, with a $300,000 bonus when you graduate. Okay.
Amazing.
Now, it seems too good to be true, but do the math. It's true, and the only reason it doesn't happen is because of the power of the teachers union and their hold on the Democratic Party. I mean, the situation.
Well, I was just going to say, I've been to many of your, your Yass Prize, where you're giving out awards, cash awards, to some of these great private schools, and I've been to many of your awards, and it's the most inspiring thing I've ever seen. I mean, these kids, they're Hispanic, they're Black, they're white, they're for low income, middle income families that are really so appreciative of having this alternative to often failing schools. And most of them are from inner cities. They're very poor areas. It's just a shame that I see these kids, I get so inspired by them, Jeff, and then I wonder, why can't everyone have this opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, to me, the greatest, shame of the country. They could all have that opportunity. They could be happy. And it's not like this is some new government program where we have to raise taxes. It's actually going to be a tax deduction, because we can do it so much better and so much cheaper that there's no new taxes. But the labor union, the teachers unions have the jobs. They know they can't compete. They fight tooth and nail to prevent these things from happening. So that's the bad news, that they're fighting us like crazy. The Osprey is done. The demand is there as more schools that have states that have ESAs, education savings accounts. The problem is the supply.
By the way, can you explain to people what is, Jeff? What is an education savings account?
An education savings account like the one passed in Texas will give every child $10,000. You can go wherever you want. Here's $10,000.
Wow.
And that's enough to cover, the vast majority of Catholic schools or private schools or charter schools. Or if you want to start a homeschool and get 5 or 6 kids together, you now have $50,000 or $60,000 to go hire. If you don't know you don't know chemistry, you can hire the chemistry teacher for an hour a day or something like that. And all these little groups could happen, and there'll be a wonderful amount of freedom, much cheaper and much better. But the problem was that the Osprey tried to solve is when this massive demand comes in, because it doesn't start till 2027 in Texas. Where's the supply? The government has shut down the private sector from doing anything in education. For 150 years. So we are giving money out to these entrepreneurs who have done a small, a typical entrepreneur would have like 500 kids. And he says, you know what, I can have 5,000 if I had the money. So we're trying to get, fund these entrepreneurs so that they can expand, dramatically and meet the demand. So
our flagship station for this show is New York on WABC. And, New York, I think they spend $35,000 or so per student. And the results are, 44. What is it? 44,000.
44,000. $40 billion divided by 900
per year.
Kids.
Per year?
Yes, per year. Yeah.
Oh my God! So you could practically go to Harvard for that amount of money, and
you can go to Andover if you want. Right?
So I mean, we shouldn't laugh because it's such a serious issue that we're spending $44,000, and I looked up the research. In a Catholic school, it's closer to $20,000, and so and the Catholic schools have superior results. So in other words, you could pay half as much and get better results if we just let these kids go to Catholic schools.
Right. Right.
I mean, why wouldn't we let that? I mean, it's so stupid that we don't. If anybody who cares about the children of our country and cares about our future as a country, I mean, Jeff, I'm an economist. The thing that scares me the most, because I love this country, we're the world economic superpower. How can we be the world economic superpower when half the kids graduating from some of these high schools don't even know how to read or do basic math?
Yeah, it's and they're in schools that are violent and that it's uncomfortable. And besides the fact that they're not getting education, it's just miserable, and there's just no reason for it. That's why I chose this as the as the policy that I'm most trying to change, because I think nothing is absurd and is hypocritical and as big. Remember, K through 12, we spend $800 billion a year, $800 billion. So there's a lot of problems, a lot of stupid policies going around in America, but there's none that's the size of the government monopoly on education. And we're making we're making some progress, but obviously not enough. So
tell me about this ECCA program that you've been promoting. What is that?
Well, it's called the Education Children's Choice Act. Starting in 2026, every taxpayer will be able to deduct $1,700 from their tax bill, 100% deduction. So if you owe $1,700 in taxes, you can say, send the $1,700 to a
Yes.
scholarship organization. So it costs
Yes.
you nothing. And, it was in the one big, beautiful bill.
Oh, so it's in law now. It's in law now.
It's in law. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Trump got it through, which was remarkable. I mean, the status quo, the trying to stop it was a vicious fight. And, there was a lot of queasy Republicans who wouldn't go forward either. And Trump made sure that they found their backbone and they voted, we
Right.
got 100% of the Republican votes, almost zero Democratic votes. And he got it through. And we think this could be a game changing, because it could be $50 to $100 billion a year of money that's available for scholarships. So finally, private schools could start, and they have money to compete with the government schools, because they have a funding program also.
So let me, we just got a couple minutes left. So let me make sure I understand this, Jeff, and that our listeners do. So I'm a taxpayer, right? I have federal tax liability. Can I take this deduction from, how does it work for someone who wants to be, to contribute to the program?
The IRS form hasn't been written yet, but when it will be, we're hoping you just check a box and say, I owe $5,000 in taxes, send $1,700 off to a scholarship organization.
Oh, wow.
Authorized, and then it costs you absolutely nothing. But
because in other words, so in that instance, I would pay $3,300 to the government and then $1,700 for this scholarship program. That who decides where that money goes?
Well, you can pick your scholarship program.
Oh my God! Wow.
Scholarship programs will say these are the kind of ideas that we like to support, or whatever, and you can choose.
So, folks, it costs you nothing. So, if you care about kids, this is a great way to help children get a better education at no cost to you.
Exactly. It was a minor miracle that it got passed. Yeah,
that is. It's amazing that we're able to beat back the teachers' unions on that. Well, Jeff, there is probably.
I know you don't like tariffs, Steve. I know you don't like tariffs, but Trump may have made up for his tariffs problems by getting this bill passed. Okay?
Well, I mean, my God, how many people do you think could be helped by this? I mean, hundreds of thousands of kids, maybe millions.
We're hoping it's a lot. We're hoping it's a lot more than that.
Wow.
And once people realize, why don't we have this forever? Why is this a new program? It could revolutionize how education gets done in America.
Amazing. I've been talking to Jeff Yass, who has done more for educational opportunity for kids than very few people can say more. They have done more for educational choice and providing every child in America a quality education. What a concept. Jeff, thanks for what you do. Thanks for your amazing contribution to the University of Austin. Keep it up, my friend. We need you. And we will be right back, folks. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for sharing some of your weekend to talk about the issues of the day. We talk about economics. We talk about finance. We talk about politics. I said at the outset of this show that I am disturbed and really quite anxious about what has happened to New York City, and the fact that you had half of the voters who turned out on Tuesday voted for an overt socialist. He doesn't even deny it, that he has these ideas that the rich will pay all the taxes and that everything else is going to be free bus service, free housing, free food, grocery stores run by the government. This sounds a lot to me like what has happened in communist and socialist countries around the world. And when I heard about this and that he had actually been elected, because I really just didn't think it would possibly happen in 2025 in America, I thought nobody better to explain why this is so disturbed than Jennifer Grossman, who's been a friend of mine for 30 years and is the CEO of the Atlas Society. You all hopefully know one of the most famous books ever written was Atlas Shrugged, and it tells us about why we need liberty and freedom if we want to be prosperous and free. And so, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining.
Well, it's great to be here, and I am equally distressed about what happened in New York. But I think we can also put it into context. I think there are other signs that when there is a viable, moderate alternative, we saw that in San Francisco with Mayor Lurie. We saw it in Minneapolis with the socialist candidate being defeated. Same, I think. By
the way, that one I don't think that one's done yet. I think they're still counting votes out there. But it looks like the non-socialist is going to win. But you never know with the way they count ballots.
Right. Yeah. But and then we shouldn't bury our heads in the sand. There's obviously is a real problem here. There's a problem that a significant percentage of young people have a favorable view, not only of socialism, but also of communism.
Right.
And I think that to an extent, this is sort of the luxury of not having a direct experience or having, the fact that there was a Soviet Union and we were enemies. But it's also just more evidence of the kind of indoctrination that passes for public education. But I think it's not just a function of economic illiteracy and historical illiteracy. And I think that is a problem that those of us who are champions of capitalism and free markets too often make, that we just think, well, if we can only convince them with facts and logic, then we will win the day. I think that where Ayn Rand really captured this was in making the moral case for capitalism, conceding that even if in some kind of fantasy world, socialism actually did work and could do all of these things that Mamdani is promising, it still would be an immoral option because it is a system that is fundamentally incompatible with individual liberty and freedom, and incompatible with human nature itself.
So I couldn't agree more. And when I used to give lectures on college campuses, I don't do it as often as I used to, but probably over the years, I've probably been to 75 to 100 universities around the country, talking about what you talk about as well, which is the economic and moral case for free enterprise and liberty. And one of the things that I found so interesting, I'd love your response to this, is when I talk about why socialism is a failure, I would get a lot of pushback from the students because, as you said, they've been indoctrinated with exactly the opposite message. And what I found fascinating was after I was done giving my lecture, the people who would come up to me would be the foreign students, the ones who grew up in Cuba or Guatemala, or the students who grew up in some of them North Korea, some of them Russia, some of them Hungary, and they would say, I came to America to get away from socialism, and yet we've got these young kids that are 19, 20, 21 years old who think socialism is some road to paradise, and they say, believe me, it suffocates you.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm seeing the same thing. I mean, we are trying to get American young people, students, to our Gulf Coast, but I'm just deluged by the number of international students who, have a story to share because it's much closer and it's real to them. But I think that this is not just a case of illiteracy. This is also a case of bad values. So much of this is driven by envy, by resentment, by victimhood, by greed, properly understood as the desire for the unearned. And it's, again, interesting that here in America, there is someone who's actually measured what he calls the social envy coefficient. And in America, young people are much more envious, much more likely to look at the successful with resentment and with envy and
Right.
much more likely to do that than older generations. You go overseas,
Yeah.
and that is flipped. Young people overseas have a much more positive view of.
So, this is an
entrepreneurship.
this is an important point. And by the way, in our hotline, and I think most of our listeners get that. I know you get it, Jennifer. But in yesterday's hotline, by the way, if you don't get the hotline, go to unleashprosperity.com and sign up. But we had a very, very, very famous quote from Thomas Sowell, who is one of the great economists. I think he's like 94 years old right now, but is still putting out great stuff. But here's what he said, and I'd like your reaction to this, Jennifer. And this is one of his most famous quotes. He said, quote, "Envy was once considered to be one of the 7 deadly sins before it became one of the most admired virtues under its new name, social justice."
Right. Well, and Ayn Rand had an interesting take on envy. Most of us tend to think of it as, just wanting other people's stuff, right? Wanting redistribution. But she talked about it as hatred of the good for being good, saying that they do not want your fortune, they want you to lose it. They do not want your life, they want you to lose it. And so there's something very dark, very nihilistic, very evil about this kind of envious desire for a system which treats everybody the same. Well, actually, it doesn't treat everybody the same. A system that promises equality of outcomes necessarily treats people unequally. So I think it's important to fight back, and I think it's important to fight back in ways that young people understand and that they find engaging, and that's what we're trying to do at the Atlas.
Well, Jennifer, that's what you do every day, and that's why I admire you so much. And Atlas Society, which is amazing. You should go. It was at atlassociety.org. What is it? What's the website?
Yep. atlassociety.org. Find us on all of the socials.
Well, there's so much more I wanted to talk to you about this afternoon, and we didn't fill in a lot of it, but this has been a great education for me and our listeners. Jennifer, thanks. And can you come on sometime in the next few weeks and we can continue this conversation?
Absolutely. I always love talking to you, Steve.
Thank you, Jennifer. We'll be right back, folks. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is The More Money Show. Thanks again for spending some time with us this weekend to talk about the issues that matter when it comes to economics, finance, and politics. My next guest is Tan Parker, who is the second highest ranking Republican in the Senate in Texas. He is the majority leader in Texas. And the reason I wanted to bring Tan on is because of what happened in New York and New Jersey in these elections, where you had pretty liberal takeover of the city in New York and the state of New Jersey there in Trenton. And it's all about taking more of what people have and spreading out more welfare benefits and giving stuff to people for free. And as I've said many times on this show, the state that is growing like crazy and prospering like crazy, well, there's 2 actually, and that's Texas and Florida. And so I wanted to bring Tan on because he is in the legislature in Texas. Tan, thanks for joining. And are you ready? I think you're going to see hundreds and hundreds of thousands of additional New Yorkers coming to Texas.
Well, Steve, first of all, it's great to be with you always. Thanks for having me on your show. And I could not agree with you more, my friend. I mean, obviously, as a proud American, I'm so sad to see this election outcome in New York City. And what a horrific thing for the people of New York City and the people of New York and the country as a whole. But there's no question about it that Texas will be an enormous beneficiary as the individual that was blessed to carry our capital markets legislation package in Texas that supports the future of finance in America, in Dallas, in Texas, what we call now the future of Wall Street, calling it Y'all Street. I think that we are very, very well positioned, right? Y'all Street is going to be enormously successful because of the fact that people are not going to put up with this nonsense in New York City. Right. And there's no question that Texas was already growing rapidly, but this will certainly only accelerate, obviously, our growth of capital markets in Texas as more and more New Yorkers leave to find sanity and a normal place to raise their family and to conduct business again in the country in Texas.
Yeah, and it's been happening. Texas has gained, I think you know these statistics, Tan, who is the Texas majority leader in the Senate there in Austin. You've seen Texas gain over 2 million additional residents from other states on net, which is you're a magnet. And by the way, the people are coming. And forgive me if I'm wrong, because you live there, but as I look at the data, it's people are successful. People are businessmen and women, people who are job creators, people who are investing in Texas, and they have families, and they're the future of Texas.
Steve, that's exactly right. We're very encouraged by the data. The people that are coming are incredibly hardworking, productive Americans. They view the world the way that we do. The importance of free markets and free enterprise to strengthen our democracy, and that capitalism is the path forward for America, as it's been from the very beginning. That's how we lift people out of poverty and difficulty, is through capitalism, not these crazy socialist schemes that Mamdani is obviously out there promoting and will be a practitioner of. And so that's exactly what's happening. And again, I said a moment ago, I think it's right. We're going to continue to accelerate dramatically as people look for an environment that is, frankly, indicative of what America is all about. Texas is the place where the American dream is the most alive and well, Steve, and that's what people are recognizing.
And one of the people, by the way, that is thinking about leaving New York is Jamie Dimon, who is the head of J.P. Morgan, one of the biggest banks in the world. And that would be something if he moved out of New York and moved to somewhere like Dallas or Austin or Houston.
Well, absolutely. We would welcome that. We'd obviously welcome J.P. Morgan have an even bigger presence. They already have an enormous presence.
They do, I know.
Here in North Texas, right? As do many of America's largest financial services firms. We have more financial services professionals right now in Texas here in November of 2025 than does all of New York. So when you think about that, you just realize we are very well positioned to be able to support the growth. And I think Texas will not just be the home of red state finance for America. I think truly over the next decade, and it's only accelerated because of this disastrous decision that the people of New York City voted for, it'll only accelerate to make Texas the financial capital of America over the decade, not just red state America, but all of America and its financial and capital markets future.
I agree. I think the only competition you have, it certainly isn't going to be New York. It might be Miami or Tampa or another state that is a very pro-growth state. In fact, Texas and Florida have been in a real competition to see who can attract more. By the way, Florida has actually attracted more capital over the last 10 years than Texas. You're always running neck and neck, number one and number two. So I think most of our listeners know this, but what is your income tax rate there in Texas?
Well, it is zero. We have zero state income tax in Texas, and everybody needs to recognize that. And that's in our Constitution, Steve. And it's also in our Constitution in Texas that we have a spending cap on our state spending. And so we will always have balanced budgets. We're always going to be responsible stewards of the people's money. It's not our money in government. It's the people's money. And we try to give it back at every opportunity and limit what government has in terms of intervention in the lives of people and into businesses. We really try to have the lightest regulatory and tax environment in the country, and then get out of the way and allow citizens to live their lives and companies to be able to flourish. And that's what we're doing, and why we're so excited about the data that shows that the individuals that are coming to Texas share those values. Yeah. They share our conservative values of faith and family. Hard work. There's no shortcuts in this life. You only get ahead when you work hard. And
the other thing, Tan, you don't do in Texas that New York is doing, because the idea of what Mamdani is talking about is everything's going to be free. Free bus service, free housing, free food, free this, free that. I mean, that's just going to sap the work effort and the entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, where are they going to get the money to pay for all this stuff?
Well, absolutely, Steve. Where are they going to get the money? And then think about what they're doing to those job creators and entrepreneurs. They're going to go and compete with the entrepreneurs that are out there looking for capital and building businesses and providing services. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Socialism is a failed system. It's always been a failed system throughout history, and any time it was ever applied, the lessons are very clear. I just hate that the people of New York City are going to have to go through those painful lessons again because of the actions of those that voted for this individual. And we pray for a better, brighter future for America, and that this will never happen again. And that's really where Texas steps up, because what they're going to see, what the American people will see in New York City, will have the ultimate counterpoint in Texas that leads for liberty and prosperity and freedom, and the America of old. And like I said a moment ago, there's no place where the American dream is more alive than Texas.
Yes.
And it will continue to be able to be that showcase between the two.
So, Tam, we just have a minute and a half left, but so let me just make one last point and question for you. Talking to Tan Parker, who is the majority leader of the state Senate in Texas, Austin, Texas, which is where New Yorkers are going to head to get away from socialism in New York. Now, people would say, well, look, we're just trying to help the poor people in New York City. Well, you actually have a lower poverty rate in Texas than New York does.
100%. Look, socialism never works. Government, can only do so much. We believe in a limited government, but we also have the most generous people on the planet as Americans broadly, and Texans in particular. We believe in private philanthropy and helping people in need, and the way to lift people out of poverty, to provide economic opportunity is through great educational outcomes, first and foremost. We have school choice now here in Texas. We have great public schools, great public charters, great private schools, homeschooling, investing in our workforce. We have more Tier 1 universities, R&D universities than any other state in America to drive commercialization of great innovation and technology and so forth. But when you get an education and you have these kind of job opportunities that are here in Texas, that's how you pull a family out of poverty that's been in poverty situations for multiple generations. It's the only way to do it. It's the only way that's sustainable. Not this free government nonsense giveaway of everything. It's never worked. It will never work. It'll be an absolute abject failure for the people of New York City. Well, and my message is I hope that the people of New York City will stand up and fight against it.
Me too.
And ultimately be able to stand up to restore, for the good of the country, New York City, after this administration.
Well, Tan, you're exactly right. And I wanted to hear people, because, and by the way, it's not just New York, it's New Jersey is also going down the drain as well, with another big liberal taking over their governorship. And I would just end this conversation by saying, Tan, the best welfare program in the world is a good job.
Amen. Amen. There's no question about that, brother. We focus here in Texas on job creation, second to none. This week, and our various constitutional amendments, our Prop 6 passed that made certain that we will never tax a securities transaction or transfer. The New York Assembly, the New Jersey Assembly was going to do that in years past. We just took that step this week to give great predictability to the future of American finance and what we call Wall Street, because a job is the greatest way to provide opportunity for the people of this country.
Dan, you are the best. That's a great message for people all over the country. And we have affiliates throughout the country, but especially for people in New York and New Jersey and the New York area. Thanks so much for coming on, Tan. This is The More Money Show, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is The More Money Show. Thanks so much for sticking with us as we enter the second hour of the program. Again, I am so thrilled to be able to sit in front of this microphone every Saturday afternoon and speak with you directly about the economic and financial and the political issues that matter most. And I want to start by, look, I don't want to saturate you with criticism of this election outcome, But I want to just say a couple more things about this because I am disturbed by it, and it just shakes me a little bit that we're seeing educated people with education, talking about why we need more socialism and why we need more even communism. And so first of all, let me tell you, I was friends with Milton Friedman before he died. He was the greatest economist in the last 100 years. Some of you heard me tell this story before, but I think now more than ever, you need to hear it. And we used to, 1 or 2 times a year, before he and Rose passed. And by the way, his wife, Rose Friedman, was also a great economist in her own right. And they both wrote a book called Free to Choose, which was written by both of them. And it was about why freedom and free markets are so critical to the prosperity of people. And towards the end of his life, one of the last dinners I had with Milton Friedman, I think it was around early 2000s. I think at the time he was about 80, late 80s, maybe around 90. I don't remember exactly. But he was of sound mind, although his body was deteriorating. And I remember he turned to me at one of these dinners, and he was really forlorn. And he said, "Steve, the most important lesson that we should all have learned in the 20th century was that freedom and free markets are a success, and that socialism and communism, everywhere it has been tried, is a failure." And then he said, and yet the conclusion from this that so many young people say is that we need more socialism. And he was right. And how do you draw that conclusion? If you don't know that socialism and communism, well, it wasn't just a failure, by the way, it was immoral. It led to, you look at the great socialist communists, the ones who took charge in countries like Russia and North Korea and China and Cuba, that they not only impoverished their citizens, they killed people. Mao was the greatest butcher who ever walked the planet. He starved to death several 100 million of his own people. So look at Lenin. Look at Castro, how he destroyed Cuba. For 50 years, Cuba made zero economic progress while the rest of the world was flourishing. So I'm pretty forlorn about this. I'm pretty depressed about this, that so many young people are graduating from high school and college and not knowing this incredibly important historical lesson. And I don't want people to have to find it out the hard way. And New York may do that. New Yorkers may discover that within 3 or 4 years that their city has gone to hell, and it's going to cause real problems for the people who live there. And incidentally, the people who will be harmed the most by these giveaway policies and the soak the rich policies are going to be the poorest among us. That's the disgrace. The people who are going to be left behind are the ones who are already living in poverty. And so I'm really disturbed by this. And another thing that I'm really disturbed about, you hear every day the Democrats saying 42 million people depend on food stamps. 42 million. We've got to give people more food stamps. And I'm thinking, think about that. 42 million Americans in the richest country in the world, the land of opportunity. 42 million people have to depend on the government to put food on their table. I mean, come on. Now, if you're disabled, or you have some problem where you can't work and can't earn a living for yourself, of course we're going to provide aid to people like that. But it's embarrassing that 42 million people have to have the government provide food through food stamps. And incidentally, when I'm in the grocery store, I notice that a lot of the people, they don't look poor to me. They look like they're doing pretty well. They got steaks in there, and they got, they've got lavish food and cheeses and this and that, that sometimes even I can't afford to buy. And they're paying for this stuff with food stamps, with their card now. And it's just outrageous to me. So why not have a system where maybe these are loan programs, and if you fall on tough times, and all of us have done that in our lifetime. I've lost jobs in my career, and I was wondering, gosh, where am I going to get the next paycheck? How am I going to be able to afford, to feed myself and my family? Most of us have gone through that. But what we do is we get back on our feet, and God willing, we're back in the saddle again. And so once you get back in the saddle, how about a situation where you pay that money back? I was mentioning the other day this story from one of my favorite movies, which is called Cinderella Man. And it's a great story of a famous boxer during the Great Depression era, when a lot of Americans were truly going hungry and they really needed some government assistance, although people resisted going on public assistance because, people didn't think it was, they were embarrassed to go on public assistance. And if they did go on public assistance, it was for a short time until they were able to get their feet back on the ground. And so this is the story. I'm just looking this up as we speak. It's a story of James Braddock, who actually won the heavyweight world championship in 1935. That's why they called him Cinderella Man, because he came out of nowhere. If you haven't seen this movie, it's a fantastic movie. And there's a very famous scene in that movie that I'll never forget, which was that, by the way, he beat Max Baer, who was the big German, who everybody said was unbeatable, and he was defeated by Max, he was defeated. And at one point in the movie, James Braddock had to go on welfare. He had to go to the welfare office. He had a number of kids, and he had no livelihood, and he was trying to find any job anywhere he could. And that was when he had 24% unemployment. There truly weren't jobs available. You had to scrimp and save, and he was embarrassed. He had to go to get a welfare check from the government. And the first thing that he did when he started to make some money is he returned to the welfare office, and he walked up to the counter, and he gave $600 to the person behind the desk, said, "You gave me this money, and now I'm giving it back." Because back then we had a lot of pride, and people, would only go on welfare if they absolutely needed to. Now it's seen as just a rite of passage. Everybody has the right to get all this free stuff. There's something wrong with that ethic in America. Come on. If you're able to work and you've got a brain in your head, you can find work and you can pull yourself up from your bootstraps, as the old saying goes, and you can make something of you. And there is no dignity. There is no dignity on going on welfare. And, I know people fall on tough times, but people who feel like they can just collect money from the government month after month, that's no way to live. It's no way to get rich, and it's no way to have a sense of self-worth. And so we've got to get back to the idea of everybody finding their path forward, and that should not be welfare benefits, and it should not be free things, because at some point New York City is going to run out of free stuff. And as I said earlier on the show, they're going to try to come to Washington for a bailout, because all the rich people will have left. They'll have gone to Texas and Florida. So come on, let's get it right. You've got so many other states that are flourishing. You got even cities that are flourishing by providing jobs and providing a hospitable environment for business. Because there's an old saying that liberals and socialists love jobs, but they hate employers, and you can't have one without the other. So that's my sermon for the day. We've got a great show lined up for the second hour. Thanks for joining, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. We're talking about what is going on with these election results and what this move to the left in states like New Jersey and New York and Virginia will mean for our country. And one of the things that fascinated me, by the way, in terms of the outcome of the election and why people voted the way they did, and why we saw this very, very strong Democratic turnout and a real clobbering of Republicans, was that people said they were concerned about the cost of living, affordability. And look, I get it. If you're living on a fixed income and, prices are higher, and let's not forget, most of the reason the prices are higher is because Joe Biden was president for 4 years. And so 85% of the increase in the cost of living that you're seeing is due to Biden, not Donald Trump, although prices are still rising a little too fast. And I do think, by the way, that Trump's tariffs have contributed somewhat to that higher inflation. But I thought what I would do for you is provide you with a list of where the cost of living in America is the highest. In other words, which states struggle most with the cost of living and affordability, and which states have the most affordability based on what things cost in these states. So you might want to jot this down, by the way. These are fascinating numbers. They come from U.S. News, and that's not necessarily the most unimpeachable source, but I think their numbers are fairly reliable. Okay, so are you ready? The state in the country, I'll do the bottom 10, and I'll go with the 10th. I'm going to start with the 10th highest cost state, and then I'll end with the highest cost state. So number 41 on this list, ready, is Connecticut. So Connecticut has the 10th highest cost of living. Who runs Connecticut? Oh, yes, liberal Democrats do. Oh, yes, that's right. Okay. The ninth highest state in terms of cost of living is the state I live in, Maryland. And who runs Maryland? Oh, yeah, the Democrats run Maryland. The next highest state, this would be the eighth highest cost of living state, is Oregon on the West Coast. Oregon. Who runs Oregon? Oh, yeah, Democrats control almost all the levers of power in Oregon. The next state, the seventh highest cost state, is New Hampshire. I'm a little surprised about that because New Hampshire is a Republican state, so it's an outlier here. And I'm a little surprised by this because New Hampshire doesn't have an income tax, but it is in the Northeast and costs are high in the Northeast. So I was a little surprised by that, but nonetheless. The next highest state in the country, are you sitting down, folks? New York. New York is number 45 out of 50 in terms of the most affordable, I should say the least affordable state. It ranks 45th in terms of cost of living. And that's pretty bad. Who runs New York? Who runs Albany? Who runs New York City? Oh, yeah, the Democrats do. The next highest cost state is Massachusetts. Massachusetts. Who runs Massachusetts again? Oh, yeah, the Democrats do. The next highest cost state would be Washington State. Who runs Washington State in Seattle? Oh, yeah, the liberals do. Democrats do. They're doing a wonderful job, aren't they? Reducing costs. Okay, the next highest cost state is Hawaii. That's the third highest cost state, and Hawaii is run by Democrats. It's also an island, so you could understand why things might cost more in Hawaii than other states. So we'll give them a pass, but it is a Democratic state. Okay, second highest state in the country. Uh-oh. Sorry about this, Zach. My great assistant who helps me so much with this show, Zach Laba, is a resident of this state. And I think you know what state I'm talking about. New Jersey, second highest cost state in the country. Who runs New Jersey again, Zach? Oh, yeah, the Democrats do, even if it is the home of Bruce Springsteen and John Bon Jovi. And then what state does that leave for number one? Who's the highest? Which is the highest cost state in the country? Think about this. Ding, 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 ding. California. California, the most liberal state in the country, probably the most Democrat-dominated state. There aren't many Republicans left in California. They rank 50 in cost of living. So my question is, if you believe that we need to lower the cost of living, and if you believe we need more affordability of groceries, of housing, of medical care, of education, paying the bills, why would you put in charge the people who've made everything unaffordable? I wonder about that. I'm just trying to see if they have a top 10 here. I'm just going through, in terms of the ones that have the most affordability. Oh, yeah, they do. So hang on, folks. I will, if you're thinking about leaving New York and you want to move to a low cost state, the lowest cost state in America is Arkansas. By the way, people are moving to Arkansas. By the way, it used to be one of those backwater states, but people are leaving New York and they're going to Arkansas. The second lowest cost state is Mississippi. People are moving to Mississippi. The third lowest tax state is South Dakota. By the way, South Dakota has no income tax, so no wonder things don't cost a whole lot there. The fourth lowest tax state is Oklahoma, dominated by Republicans, and costs are low. Number 5 is Louisiana, dominated by Republicans. Number 6 is North Dakota. We're talking about in terms of cost of living and affordability. North Dakota ranks 6th. 7th is Iowa, another red state. It is a low-cost state. Number 8 is West Virginia. It used to be a joke about West Virginia. It used to be one of the poorest states. Now people are moving into West Virginia. Then you've got Kansas. Kansas is number 9. They are a Republican state. And number 10 is Alabama. So let me make sure I've got this right. I'm just looking on the list again. Yes, every one of the 10 most affordable states are Republican. And 9 out of the 10 states with the highest cost of living are Democrat. I don't know. You can make of that whatever you want, folks. But gee, I look at that statistic and say, if I wanted, and incidentally, I'm not here to tell you Republicans are the answer to our problems. They probably aren't. I mean, they are equally guilty in some cases. But when you have liberal Democrats running a place like California, like New Jersey, like New York, like Massachusetts, you're going to get bad results. You're going to get really high costs. And so I understand, because I talk to my wife, every day she's yelling at me about the cost of living and how expensive everything is. But we've chosen to live in Maryland. We've made a bad choice. And incidentally, there is a straw that breaks the camel's back. And I may be leaving Maryland for Florida very soon if I could find a house there that I could afford. Because actually, Florida has become a high-cost state because everybody's moving to Florida, so the cost of housing is kind of expensive there. Incidentally, Florida is now the 11th highest cost state because there's just been such a deluge of people moving into that state. But look, the point I'm making, folks, is we are all concerned about the cost of things. We've seen a gigantic increase of inflation due to Biden, and it takes a long time to drain down those prices. But in the meantime, if you're thinking that, gee, if I vote for Democrats, they're going to make everything more affordable, the data doesn't show that. It really doesn't. If you vote for Democrats, you're going to make things less affordable, not more affordable, at least if you look at the states. So you think everything's going to be free in New York City? You think that Mamdani is going to make everything free? And you think everything's going to be honky-dory? I hope you're right. I do. I hope you're right. I want to say this loud and clear. I do not want to see the demise of New York City. I'll say that 100 times. I love New York City. I spent a lot of my time in New York City. It is one of the greatest cities in the world. I just don't want to see it be destroyed by stupid, socialist, anti-free market policies. It's as simple as that. We'll be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you were able to join us for the whole 2 hours. By the way, we're on every Saturday afternoon from 1 o'clock to 3 p.m. following the great Larry Kudlow. I appreciate you sticking with us. One of my favorite cartoons this week is, well, there's many of them have been pretty funny. One of them is the one with the Statue of Liberty on the Brooklyn Bridge with their thumb out, thumbing for a ride out of New York. Let's hope she doesn't leave. But another funny one is, the old Charlie Brown, famous cartoon where Lucy, holds the football and Charlie Brown runs up, of course, tries to kick the football. She pulls it away and he ends up right on his fanny and he falls for it every time, and it's just a very, very funny cartoon from Charles Schulz. And we always laugh at that. And in this meme that went out, Charlie Brown is running down the field to make to kick the football, and who's holding the football but Mamdani? And of course, he pulls it away, and he ends up on his butt. And that's New York. New Yorkers were Charlie Brown. You fell for it. You fell for it. How many times do you have to know he's going to pull the football away and that socialism isn't going to work? So I am worried about Wall Street moving out of New York City. I was on Fox News and Fox Business News throughout this past week warning of that. It's not inevitable. Maybe Mamdani will come to his senses, and maybe we'll have some wise policies out of this new administration. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's see what he does. Let's see if he can. Sometimes politicians will come in and they will surprise you. I was really surprised by Bill Clinton, for example, in the 1990s. I thought it would be a disaster, and it wasn't a disaster. Bill Clinton was a true moderate, free market, centrist Democrat. The economy did great when he was president. We had balanced budgets. We had a record stock market. And so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I'm very worried about this. And for those of you in New Jersey, I just don't really understand why it is that when you see the state declining so rapidly, you would stick with the status quo. There's an old saying from my father, who was a brilliant man, and he was also really into sports. And one of the things he always told me is, you always change you never change a winning strategy, and you always change a losing strategy. It's good, wise words. And that's true in life, and that's true in government. It's not just true in a football game or a basketball game. If you've got something that's working, stick with it. And if you've got something that isn't working, change. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are afraid of change, and so they stick with the status quo, and they pay a very high price for it. Folks, I really appreciate you sticking with me in this show. We've been doing this now for 5 or 6 years, The More Money Show. I am so privileged to be able to sit in front of this microphone and give you my best ideas, but most importantly, bring on, I hope you agree, we had some really great guests today, really explaining the way the world really works. And we'll be back even with a better show next week, same bat time, same bat channel. This is The More Money Show on WABC.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe
at BeBullish.com.
The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.